"She's with me." The single dad spoke calmly. He didn't know who she was. The entire ballroom went silent when the security guard grabbed the woman's arm. She had been standing alone beneath a crystal chandelier, surrounded by wealthy guests who knew her face but were too afraid to approach her. Then, from across the crowded room, a tired single father stepped forward and calmly said, "She's with me." The guard froze. The woman turned toward him with an expression he couldn't understand. And the strangest part was this: the man had absolutely no idea who she really was. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change someone's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Enlightened Story. Sometimes one small act of kindness becomes the beginning of an extraordinary story. Nathan Cole had learned not to expect much from life. At 36, he was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Ruby, alone in a tiny apartment above an old bakery. Every morning began before sunrise. He packed Ruby's lunch, made sure she had clean clothes for school, and then rushed to his job delivering supplies across the city. His paycheck was never enough to make him comfortable, but it was enough to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. His wife had died 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving Nathan with a grief he rarely spoke about, and a daughter who still sometimes asked why mommy couldn't come home. Nathan never had the right answer. He simply hugged Ruby and promised her that no matter how difficult life became, he would always be there. One rainy Thursday evening, Nathan stopped at a small cafe after work because Ruby had begged him for hot chocolate. They sat near the window watching rain slide down the glass while Ruby drew pictures in an old notebook. That was when Nathan noticed a woman sitting alone at the other end of the cafe. She looked exhausted. Her expensive coat was damp, her hair was slightly disheveled, and she kept staring at her phone without answering any of the calls coming through. There was something about her expression that reminded Nathan of himself during the worst nights after his wife's death. She looked like someone who had everything except someone she could trust. When the woman suddenly stood up, she dropped her wallet. Nathan picked it up and walked over to return it. She thanked him quietly, but before she could leave, she stumbled. Nathan instinctively reached out and caught her. She whispered that she was fine, but her hands were trembling. Nathan offered to call someone, yet she shook her head. She simply asked if she could sit with him for a few minutes, because she didn't want to be alone. Nathan looked at Ruby, who immediately smiled and moved her chair over, making room for the stranger without asking a single question. That small gesture broke something inside the woman. She sat down and, for nearly an hour, she talked about everything except who she was. She told Nathan that she had spent years building a life around business, success, and expectations, only to discover that most people around her cared more about what she owned than who she was. Nathan didn't judge her. He simply listened. Before leaving, the woman thanked him and asked for his name. Nathan smiled and said it was Nathan. She gave him only her first name, Isabel, and disappeared into the rain. Nathan thought that would be the end of it. He was wrong. 2 days later, Nathan received an unexpected invitation to an exclusive charity gala at the city's most prestigious hotel. He almost threw it away, assuming it was a mistake. But the invitation carried his name and came with a note thanking him for helping someone during a difficult moment. Nathan had no idea who had sent it. He considered ignoring it, but Ruby had recently been selected for a school art competition, and the gala offered a chance to win a scholarship sponsored by one of the city's largest foundations. Nathan decided to attend. That evening, he entered the ballroom wearing the only suit he owned. It was old, slightly loose around the shoulders, but carefully pressed. Ruby stayed with a neighbor while Nathan attended alone. Inside, chandeliers glittered above hundreds of wealthy guests. Men wore tailored tuxedos, women wore designer gowns, and conversations revolved around investments, companies, and million-dollar donations. Nathan immediately felt like he didn't belong. Then he saw Isabel. She stood near the center of the ballroom wearing a stunning silver gray coat. But unlike the woman from the cafe, she looked surrounded by people now, important people, powerful people. Nathan started walking toward her, hoping simply to thank her for the invitation. Before he reached her, a large security officer stepped between them. The guard looked at Nathan suspiciously and told him he couldn't approach the woman. Nathan stopped. He looked toward Isabel, who suddenly seemed trapped in a crowd of people trying to control where she went and who she spoke to. Then something unexpected happened. Isabel looked directly at Nathan. For 1 second, their eyes met, and Nathan saw the same loneliness he had seen in the cafe. Without thinking about the consequences, Nathan stepped forward. The security guard reached for Isabel's arm, and Nathan calmly said, "She's with me." The room went completely silent. People turned. The guard stared at Nathan as though he had just committed the greatest mistake of his life. Isabel herself looked stunned. Then she slowly walked toward Nathan and stood beside him. One of the wealthy guests whispered, "Does he even know who she is?" Nathan didn't. He only knew that she had once been a lonely woman sitting alone in a cafe, and he couldn't stand watching someone treat her like she had no choice of her own. Then the hotel's director hurried across the room, his face pale. "Mr. Cole," he said nervously, "you don't understand. This is Isabel Grant." Nathan looked confused. The director continued, "She's the owner of this hotel." A wave of whispers spread through the ballroom. But the biggest surprise came moments later when Isabel turned toward everyone and calmly explained that Nathan was the only person who had treated her like a human being that week. He hadn't asked for money. He hadn't asked what company she owned. He hadn't even known her last name. When she had been struggling, he simply listened. Then Isabel revealed why she had invited him. She had recently discovered that a charitable foundation connected to her company had been losing money through corruption. She had been planning to shut the program down. But after meeting meeting Nathan and learning about Ruby, she realized the problem wasn't the foundation itself. The problem was that the people managing it had forgotten whom they were supposed to help. Isabel offered Nathan a position overseeing a new community program designed to help struggling single parents find stable work, housing assistance, and educational opportunities for their children. Nathan couldn't speak. For years, he had believed he was simply surviving. That night, he discovered that his greatest strength had never been money, status, or success. It had been his ability to remain kind even when life had given him every reason not to be. Months later, Nathan and Ruby moved into a small but beautiful home. Ruby received the scholarship she had dreamed about, and Nathan helped build a program that changed hundreds of families' lives. Isabel became a close friend, but neither of them ever forgot the night their paths crossed in that little cafe. Nathan once told Ruby that sometimes people enter your life when you least expect them, not because you need saving, but because you are meant to remind each other that hope still exists. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Enlightened Story for more emotional stories of hope, courage, and second chances. And before we end, comment kindness still matters if you believe one small act of compassion can change someone's entire life. Because Nathan thought he was simply helping a lonely woman in a cafe. He never knew she was about to change his life forever.